Welcome into a special edition of the Group of Five Deep Dive. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined as always by Mike Ainello. We are going to discuss which G5 team is going to punch its ticket to the first college football 12-team playoff. It's got to be the highest rated G5 conference champion. So it doesn't matter what you do in the regular season if you fumble the bag in that conference championship game. What's interesting at this point, this being the first go around of the 12-team field in the automatic bid, there's a lot of teams that are not technically out of it. Think about it during March Madness when you see those long lists of teams that are well positioned, teams on the bubble, teams that are drawing dead. There's a lot of teams on the bubble, and I wouldn't say go as far as to say that they control their own destiny, but they're certainly not out of it with just one loss. And you're going to make the argument that with two losses, you shouldn't be writing off some teams just yet.
Yeah, that was gonna be my first question to you. And I think it's safe to say three teams or three losses eliminates you from this playoff consideration, especially when you consider, what is Liberty going to do? Sure, a one-loss team, we all kind of assume will jump Liberty. Probably a two-loss team if they have a good enough resume. A three-loss team jumping on undefeated Liberty is probably going to be tough. So that's my question to you: is does two losses eliminate you, or are you still in the race if you can stack up enough good wins? And kind of coinciding with that question, is your beloved Texas State future dead?
I'll answer that last part first. It is not dead because lots of mayhem can happen. And I also think it's important to keep in mind the committee showed last year, now, granted, it was in the four-team field, they showed by making that move against Florida State that the language that they had put in previous, press conferences and their criteria, that injuries are taken into account. So say Boise runs the table from here. They got the one narrow loss at Outson, which kind of counts as like a
A win.
facto win, kind of, at least in
Right.
the eyes of many college football fans. If they were to win every other game and they win the conference championship game and Ashton Jeanty, God forbid, pulls his hamstring badly on his last 80-yard touchdown run and is out and shuts it down, he just wants to go to the NFL draft, the committee can just say, okay, without Jeanty, we don't think Boise deserves it. So there's a lot of goalpost moving that the committee can do. So that's why I would say for a team like Texas State or a team that already has two losses at this point, it's not over yet. It's the kind of ball you're playing in late November and early December. And these resumes, it's going to get really interesting because some of these wins, like UNLV is a team that I'm high on. I'm holding a 22-1 ticket for them to make the college football playoff. Those wins early in the season, I know the joke was that they could win the Big 12 if they kept this up. Kansas, not the Kansas team with Kotelnicki calling plays in 2023. Houston, they're a corpse. So, yes, they have their Power Four designation, but all of a sudden that win, as we move further down the season, if both of those teams don't go bowling, how impressive is that to the committee? Whereas there's other opportunities, say at James Madison, yes, they have that one loss against UL Monroe. They beat North Carolina. Say North Carolina gets hot all of a sudden and they finish as a team with 8 or 9 wins. That win starts to look better. So there's a lot of things outside of the control when it comes to a resume comparison that you need to keep in mind. I think for that reason, I'm not ready to shut out any two-loss team here at the beginning of October.
So that kind of transitions perfectly to my next question because I was thinking about this with unfortunately UNLV taking that loss to Syracuse. Now my fear.
Undefeated in regulation. I'm gonna start this movement here. It's all about the PR war. Mac Brown taught me that back in '04 when he got his Longhorns to the Rose Bowl. Just got to make sure you get in front of the right microphone. Undefeated in regulation, UNLV.
Well, because I was gonna say is my biggest fear is because Boise and UNLV will play in the regular season. If Are these two teams going to split and screw themselves? And that kind of goes back to your two loss question. Because if you look at the resume, obviously whoever loses the championship game is out, but whoever wins the championship game, the rematch, will in theory have a loss to the other one who we both view as good. You look at Oregon or Boise State, like you said, their losses will be Oregon and UNLV. They beat Washington State. In this scenario, they would have beaten Oregon State, San Jose State. UNLV, yeah, sure, they're not great teams, but they're light years better than what, like, a Liberty, who they'll probably be compared to, is playing. They beat Houston, they beat Kansas, they beat Fresno State. They would have beaten Oregon State in this situation. They lost to Syracuse in overtime, and if they lose to Boise State, let's say it's a good competitive game, is that 11 and 10 and 2 UNLV, 10 and 2 Boise? Do you think they're still kind of in a good spot there if they
Let's
lose?
talk about the Liberty problem for starters. And I say this not a problem for college football, a problem for Liberty. It's that unfortunately, everyone's lasting national memory of them is just getting worked by Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. Fans don't want it. The college football playoff committee doesn't want it. They want these ratings to be great. They want teams and fans to be interested for 4 quarters. Is that fair to Liberty? No, it's not fair. What also is not fair is that they can't change their schedule. App State was supposed to be, their premier game this year. It ends up, due to the hurricane, gets canceled. App State is also kind of just fallen off a cliff defensively. They're a mess. So even if they were able to play that game, if App State loses 6 or 7 games this year, does it really matter? Liberty is at the mercy of the schedule that they have and the ecosystem that they're in. They would have to go undefeated, and every other conference champion from the G5 would have to have 2 losses for them to even get consideration. I think it's an auto jump for a G5 champion with 1 loss to be ahead of Liberty.
So what's interesting on Liberty is we didn't record an episode last week. We both got busy, but I had written down the odds for last Tuesday. So this was after the App State game had already been canceled. Liberty has now basically not played for 2 weeks. After not playing last week on their already scheduled bye, before last week, Liberty was plus 400 to make the playoff. They're now plus 550. So their odds went up despite not playing. Boise's now down to plus 130. So they are the clear favorite. Some of the other teams, by the way, on this odds board, I thought were kind of interesting. As in, the third favorite to make the playoff from the G5 is Tulane at plus 850. Memphis below them at 1200. Louisiana at 1600. Toledo at 2100, which shocked me. I kind of assumed the MAC was dead out of this. So I thought that was interesting. So I want to ask you, first of all, the team, I didn't list any team there. Who wins the Sun Belt? Because last time we did this, you said Texas State, I said JMU were my playoff picks. Since that, they both have lost. The highest rate Sun Belt team is still Texas State at 30-1. Who wins the Sun Belt? Does the Sun Belt have a chance to be in this playoff?
I think they do, but it's going to require Texas State to win the rest of their games and James Madison with 1 loss, a narrow loss at Louisiana and Monroe to be there as a 12-1 conference champion. I think they potentially could get the nod from the committee. Texas State, at least at that number, I wouldn't be interested in adding them to my portfolio. I don't think they're 100% dead. And from their on-field product, it's just the defense, which we talked about all preseason. It's betrayed them in some big moments. They blow that huge lead to Sam Houston, and they had an opportunity to win against Arizona State. So I don't think they're far away. I don't think this is like a fraud alert situation. This could be a really dynamic, pesky 8 or 9 win team at the end of the day. But I think for James Madison's case, they need them to win out to borderline be a fringe top 25 team when they beat them to be able to get that springboard on the last data point for the committee into the selection process.
Yeah, I should agree with you. I think that the best chance would be Louisiana winning out and then James Madison beating them, or Louisiana beating James Madison, either way, because Louisiana has the win against Wake Forest. Their only loss is to Tulane, who is clearly viewed highly. So if you have, the James Madison, the loss to ULM could be bad, but they beat North Carolina. Louisiana beat Wake Forest, and if they were on the table, they would have beaten App State, Coastal, Texas State, Arkansas State, and then James Madison. So I actually think JMU and Louisiana are the two best options. But we'll wrap this up with just one easy question. Who's your pick? Who is gonna make the playoff as the G5 team?
I still think it's going to be UNLV. I think they're a more complete team. They've shown me on both sides of the ball playing a dominant brand of football. Their defense has had great moments. Yes, they wore down against Syracuse, but Jackson Woodard, their star linebacker, he dropped the game-winning pick. They had opportunities in that game. I also questioned some of Barry Odom's decision making, taking the ball out of his quarterback's hand with timeouts at the end of regulation. Let Haj Malik Williams cook. I think he's the best quarterback, and I think top to bottom they have a better roster. Now they're up against Bo Jackson Incarnate and Ashton Genty, so anything is possible. But I think we're on the same page. The Boise defense gives me pause. They're going to play some teams that are going to view them as their Super Bowl moving forward. Happens this very Saturday against Hawaii. If you can spin the football, if you can create explosive plays, you can get into a track meet with Boise. And even with Genty running for 275 yards and 5 touchdowns, can you beat these guys 38-35? I think you can. And I think UNLV showed me, even in a loss to Syracuse, that they are a serious team with Haj Malik Williams and a complete one. So I'm going to go with UNLV getting it done. Now, do they do that with one loss or two losses? I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to stick my neck out in terms of that level of specificity, but I think UNLV gets it done and makes a 12-team playoff.
I'm actually gonna go, like I said, James Madison has been my pick. They lost. Now I'm a little nervous. I'm gonna go with a team we have not mentioned this whole episode. I honest to God think Army makes the playoff because when you look at Army's conference,
Whoa. Wow.
when you
Okay.
look at Army's schedule, it is a joke. They are going to win the American. They play UAB, who they're going to score 85 against. Then they play East Carolina. Then they play Air Force, who's terrible. Then they play North Texas, who can't stop the run. They play Notre Dame, not a conference game. They play UTSA, who I don't think is very good. And then they play Navy after. Navy's the best conference team they're going to play, and it doesn't count for the conference schedule. So I honestly think Army runs the table. I think they're 11-1, and Notre Dame is not losable. I will say the thing that honestly keeps me from them going 12-0 is Notre Dame gets to play Navy first, which sucks. If that was flipped, I'd be feeling a lot better. But if you haven't, first off, they beat Notre Dame during the playoff. And if they go 11-1 and their only loss is to Navy and what I assume, or to Notre Dame and what I assume will be a close, ugly game because that's what they do. These are humans making this decision. It is going to be hard not to put Army because of what a good story it'll be. I mean, everyone's a sucker for a little, you know, patriotic flair. So I'm riding with our boy Bryson Daly double. I actually think Army's better than Navy. I know you've been high on Navy. I actually think Army's better. I like this Army offense a lot. Bryson Daly looks awesome. And again, their schedule's just a joke. So they're gonna win the American or they're gonna be in the American title game. So 2,400 in the Army to make the playoff. They just gotta beat Notre Dame.
Of the service academies, Air Force is lost at sea, to mix some military metaphors here. It's just Army and Navy this year. Navy at 30-1 is a more interesting play to me because I think their offense is geared to win multiple ways. Yes, Army has been phenomenal playing the triple. They've also been playing some of the worst run defenses in America. East Carolina is
But
not an auto win, in my opinion. I think East Carolina can give them a little trouble. I think North Texas can give them trouble in terms of being able to score 35 or 38 points against their defense. I agree with you. The Notre Dame game, both against Army and Navy, is probably going to be a lower possession game. It's going to be a little bit tighter. But given the different ways you need to win, I would rather have Navy because what they've shown me through the air. Horvath is playing like he should get an invite to New York City as a Heisman finalist. He's been a top 5 guy in QBR for weeks now. I don't think this is just a flash and pan situation. I think this is an offensive coordinator scheming people wide open and allowing for them to have explosive play. So we can agree to disagree on that one, but I
we
like
can all
the
we can all
ballsiness.
agree. We can all agree. Best case scenario is 11-1 Navy versus 11-1 Army in the AAC championship game. Winner goes to the title game.
But then they'd still have to play the following week
I know, but
again,
they should
which is ridiculous. But you know what? That's the scenario that college football
just
deserves.
make that the AAC title game.
Yeah, I think the corporate sponsors would probably bristle at that a bit. And the committee also has to make the choice the following day on who goes to the playoff ahead of Army Navy, the
Just
regular season game.
move it up, move Army
Yeah.
Navy up a week.
Hey, listen, if COVID taught us anything, you can move dates around, you can move, like, they'll do it. But, when it comes to TV sponsorships and all the other money involved, they're probably not. But I'm rooting for it. It's been on my bucket list my entire life. I wanted a service academy to have a legitimate shot to make the playoff or be in a national title
Yeah.
conversation. So maybe we got a double dose of that this year. All right, for Mike Ainello, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been the G5 playoff discussion from the Group of 5 Deep Dive. Please listen in for more of our content over at the BBOC YouTube channel. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks again.